we are again. What an honor to be here with you all and to look forward to 2 days of work, but 2 days of hanging out together. And it's a soul-renewing experience, as well as feeling a bit like walking on a tightrope always in this Synod, but I'm very grateful to be here. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. One of the blessings and burdens of living in a place that has a yard, and it is a blessing and a burden, however compact that yard is that you have to pull a lot of weeds if you want it to look the least bit orderly. You pull a lot of weeds, noticing all the while just how amazingly vigorous and fast-growing they are compared to the things that you or someone else intentionally planted. I wish everything could grow that quickly. And this is exactly what I did, that is the pulling of weeds this last weekend as I thought about our gospel for today, the work you and I do in parish and diocesan ministries, and the specific work we will do in this Synod. It helped, of course, that in our gospel, Jesus tells the parable of the tiny mustard seed and the abundant and fast growth it produces as a way to paint a picture of how God ushers in what Jesus in Matthew calls the kingdom of heaven. That's also the realm of God, the kingdom of God. A realm in which reconciliation overcomes alienation, in which peace supplants conflict, in which justice triumphs over injustice, and in which love drives out fear. It's a kingdom we hope for and yearn for, especially in these times, and it's a kingdom we taste and we help to co-create with God. Jesus uses seeds and things that grow at an astonishing rate as a way of trying to wake us up to how God is working in transforming the world. And so as I pulled one raggedy, fast-growing, seemingly indestructible weed after another last weekend, I thought about you and me. I thought about all the many intentional seeds we have planted in and from our parishes and within the broader diocese, and some within the broader church and world since Synod 2015. Because now we're doing synods every 2 years. I just want to say that for some who aren't completely oriented to this thing we do. And I have to tell you, as I thought about all those seeds, I was amazed at their number and quality. So here are some of those seeds. And you'll notice I'm not saying they're the outcome, I'm saying they're the seed we plant. We have prepared and baptized 382 people since Synod 2015. We have prepared and confirmed 156 people. We have prepared and ordained 11 people, either to the diaconate, the vocational diaconate, or to the priesthood. We have done all the work that has led up to the appointment of 56 priests and deacons for roles that I would call kind of new starts, where parish and ordained person are beginning a new ministry together. We formed a new companion diocese committee and remade a refugee unit, and courtesy of a grant from a fund that will be referenced later, we hired a part-time refugee coordinator who assisted in shepherding 38 or so new refugees into Canada. And that's no small thing. Our assessment task force that was commissioned at Synod 2015 consulted with 125 people through archdeaconry meetings and heard from about half of our parishes in their survey to listen and to propose and to inform their work. Our anti-racism training team held 13 training sessions and trained about 325 people in our diocese. And this is more training of this kind that's going on than any other place in Canada, in the Anglican Church of Canada. We're really at the forefront of that. And talk about being at the forefront, a small ad hoc team in our diocese wrote and gained grant monies to pilot a new lay spiritual renewal weekend to experiment with and learn about, not only on behalf of our diocese, but on behalf of the entire Anglican Church of Canada. And this came out of all the work done around the question of should we restart Cursillo. The people we met with and then the team that got started said we will create a new manifestation of lay spiritual renewal, and we will lead the way in that. 177 participants attended our School for Parish Development. Our diocesan consultants engaged in 40 consultations with parishes. Our Parish Development Grants Committee, through monies provided by the Anglican Initiatives Fund, that's our own fund, made 20 parish development grants to parishes in our diocese. 12 of our parishes started new godly play programs, and leaders of those programs formed a godly play practitioners group under the guidance of our Synod office staff. We mounted a series of new youth conferences, 2 rounds of the Inspire Conference, a new DYM Junior Youth event on parish development, the Sacred Earth Camp of Salal and Cedar, and a DYM Leadership Visioning Retreat. 8 of our own people attended and participated in the UN Commission on the Status of Women meeting that happened in New York City. St. Hildegard's Sanctuary, a new start at St. Faith's, began. Salal and Cedar, a new start that worships in the outdoors and in different parish churches, began. St. Bridget's, a new start at Christ Church Cathedral, continued to build and grow. We contributed close to $300,000 each to the Council of the North, to international partnerships through the Office of the General Synod, and to PWRDF. We contributed, and I can't even believe this number, and Glenn, you're going to have to correct me. I hope I got the email right. $9.5 million to our parishes in 2015 and again in 2016. And then, of course, we, those in our parishes, shared countless breakfasts, lunches, and dinners with people known and unknown to them, and as a part of this, had countless conversations with people enjoying those meals. But that isn't all we do in terms of mission in our neighborhoods. We advocate, and I think of what MVA and those parishes who've participate in MVA have done, there's that. We have advocated, we have done special efforts, our units that do justice work. It just goes on and on and on. And so there are many pieces and seeds that I've left out. But what's amazing, of course, about this is that's not all we've been doing, you and I, since last Synod. At the same time, we've been planting all these intentional seeds to support God's mission through the church. You and I have had lives to live. Some of us have moved houses. Some of us have lost and gotten new jobs. Some of us have raised and been raised by children and grandchildren. We have dealt with illness. We have joyfully celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, and we have lamented the loss of those we have loved. There is loss in this room. While we have planted countless seeds in and for God's mission through the church, we have also been doing our best to live out our day-to-day lives with the kind of courage, joy, and peace that are the marks of being followers of Jesus. And this is a tremendous witness that we have with one another and to the broader church. In fact, you might say it's the most important thing we do. It's been a little over 3 years now since I became your bishop, and thank you for that. and brought with me 3 priorities that I saw articulated in the diocesan profile that I read. Relationship building at every level in the diocese, between every person and people in the diocese, that was 1. Parish development, and that's a big one, and we'll talk more about that later. And walking with Indigenous peoples towards greater relationship and justice. Those were my 3. Over time, 3 more priorities were added either by myself as I listened and learned more about our diocese, or by diocesan council as it engaged in open conversations about who we are as a diocese and what we need to focus on in the next 3 to 5 years. Those additional 3 priorities are engaging diversity. This was in the profile as well, but it was so nice to have council say this must be a priority. That is, particularly raising up leaders that's a more diverse group than we currently have. And assisting parishes in terms of acknowledging and engaging the diversity that they have within them. That was the 4th then. 5th, working towards greater financial sustainability, both for the diocese and in parishes. How do we do things that are sustainable financially over time? How do we have that as kind of one of our principles as we look at what we're doing? And finally, creating a diocesan culture of transparency, more information, not less, collaboration, let's do it together, let's work together. Sometimes people say that's my downfall. I make more work for people because I like to work with people. And courage, that is, are we willing to risk some things? These 6 priority areas then have become the ways we live out a mission of growing communities of faith in Jesus Christ to serve God's mission in the world, which is our mission statement. So today what you'll see is that these 6 priorities stream through what we'll be doing at Synod this year. And so later this morning, almost some of the first things we'll do is we'll be learning about the First Peoples learning principles as a way we might see our world, and we'll hear from our own primate. I don't know if you knew this. Fred is going to be with us tomorrow. We'll hear from our own primate Saturday morning about his experience with these same Indigenous principles in the broader church. Secondly, this afternoon we'll hear about, consider, and later vote on a resolution that attempts to increase both our parishes and our diocese financial sustainability. So that's that other principle. Tomorrow morning, we'll engage in an exercise that will raise our own awareness about diversity and the way it affects the power we have. The power we have. And then tomorrow, we'll hear about and respond to 2 parish stories, 2 amazing parish stories that will speak to us about parish development, and we'll wonder what it has to do with us. So some have said to me, and so these priorities kind of went out with the work of the assessment task force. So I got all the feedback and read that from the feedback, but then I've had lots of conversations about these priorities with people. And some have said, why are we still working on the same priorities you spoke about 3 years ago? I mean, why? Aren't we done yet? So aren't we, for instance, finished with parish development? I mean, it's a small couple of words. Aren't we finished working on inviting people to and greeting people who show up in our parishes? These are just some of the parish development stuff. Aren't we done with paying attention to stewardship? Aren't we done with strengthening our ability to engage children and youth, or with strengthening the ways we serve the communities that our parishes are located in? To this I would say, hold fast to what is good. That's our theme. And others have said to me, aren't we done with cultivating relationships with Indigenous peoples? Haven't we done enough territorial acknowledgments? I mean, it's like repeating it over and over again. Haven't we learned enough about the residential schools and their dark legacy? To this I would say, hold fast to what is good. And still others have even said, haven't we done enough of the relationship thing? And I think there are times I've said that to myself, so I'm including myself in this. Haven't we arrived at the place where in whatever we do our best to pay attention to the relationship dimension of those involved? To this I would say, hold fast to what is good. And to go further with this is me imagining into the future, or maybe not quite having to go there yet. Maybe this will be the conversations we'll have at Synod, when someday, maybe tomorrow, I hear questions about why we're still focusing on engaging diversity, because isn't everybody the same in our diocese? Of raising our awareness about the diversities among us and about understanding them, learning from them, and honoring them. What you will hear me say in response to those questions is hold fast to what is good. And when someday, maybe in 5 minutes, I hear questions about why we're doing so much work on financial sustainability, why we're paying attention to the stewardship of the resources that we have been given, and coming up with kind of cunning ways to do things, you will hear me say, hold fast to what is good. And finally, when someday I hear questions, maybe not today, about why cultivating a diocesan culture, and I would say a parish culture, that's more transparent, even more courageous, and more collaborative, why that's important, why it's better for all of us to have more information, not less, why it might be important to experiment, to kind of screw up our courage and to do things we might fail at, and why it's important to work with and rely on each other, you will hear me say, and I hope you will say, hold fast to what is good. Hold fast to what is good, because seeds take time to germinate and grow. And one of the first people's principles is about patience and things taking time, because seeds take time to germinate and grow. Hold fast to what is good, because we ourselves need time to learn what we're doing in the doing of it. In the doing of it, we learn what we're doing. Hold fast to what is good, because staying with something can be its own spiritual reward. And finally, hold fast to what is good, because we're not alone in what we're doing. We're not alone as we plant our seeds through the church to serve God's mission in the world. We're not alone, for the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. Could be her field, by the way. It is the smallest of the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. God is moving in and through and among all those intentional seeds we're planting, all that we're doing. And God is planting God's own tiny seeds that yield God's own expansive, unpredictable, far-ranging, and gracious results. For mustard bushes were not and are not the slow-growing, massive, towering cedars that the Hebrew people often used as an image for those nations of the world that had power and influence. That's not us. Rather, mustard bushes are more like weeds. They are, and that's how they were thought of in the ancient world. Very much, but kind of bigger than what I was pulling up in my yard this last weekend. Mustard bushes were raggedy, fast-growing, cunning weeds, going in all directions and vigorous to the point of being almost impossible to stamp out. This, our scripture says, is how God brings God's own realm of reconciliation, justice, peace, and love into being, through tiny, almost invisible seeds that God is forever planting, tiny seeds that produce strange, wild growth that is unstoppable. As God is doing this is my thought, we just need to keep doing our part. And we need to notice what God is doing and be willing to plant some seeds in that direction. And so people of the Diocese of New Westminster, hold fast to what is good. Keep planting your seeds, and as you tend the growth that springs up there, keep an eye out for what God is planting in the soil as well. Might be what our seed is, might be something slightly different. Keep an eye out for the wild, raggedy, vigorous evidence of the action of our God, the one who works through what we are planting, the one who works beyond what we are planting, and sometimes the one who works in spite of what we are planting, the one who creates outposts of reconciliation in the midst of alienation, the one who creates communities of peace in the midst of conflict, the one who creates moments of justice in the midst of injustice, and the one who creates sanctuaries of love in the midst of fear.